Do you think my shirt
Should I
is?
get? I love your shirt. Should I go get a Santa hat or something? Should I dig it up?
I don't know, Santa. It's kind of too early for Christmas stuff. I wouldn't go like
We're literally talking about Advent.
we're talking about
Oh,
Advent.
look at both of you. Okay, well, I'm gonna be right back because I can't just be in black. No one told me there was a dress code. Hold
What are
on.
you talking about?
I'm gonna be right back.
Zach.
Hey, there we go.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Into the Harvest friends, all of you out there. I'm Abigail, and I'm joined today by my teammates, Andrew and Lakeith. If you're new to this space, we want to use this time to help bring the clarity and confidence you need to live and share your faith in the everyday places of life. If you are joining us via YouTube, welcome. And you probably noticed that we're looking very festive today, and that's because we're talking about Advent. I should probably take this hat off because of the bell. I didn't even think about that. But you guys have really awesome shirts on, and I had to join. I had no idea. No one gave me the memo about what we were wearing today.
That's right.
Before we get started, I have a couple of housekeeping things to do. First off, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that. It's a pretty cool thing we've got going on, and we've got a lot of really awesome stuff planned for 2020. So you definitely want to be there. Also, we have been talking about this for a few episodes now, and I promise we won't keep doing this forever. But if you would like to have a question or something that you would like to discuss with us, we would love to hear from you. And we've set up this thing called SpeakPipe, speakpipe.com/intotheharvest. We can also link it in the show notes. Just click on that, tell us your name, where you're from, and then any question you might have or comment on our show. We love actually hearing your voices. So please leave us a message. We would like to hear about that. So we're kind of at this last end of the year. We're going to be talking about Advent today, and we've got some other cool things we want to talk about. Andrew, what else do we need to discuss with our listeners?
Well, I've got one more announcement, but before we jump to that, I do want to thank people who did subscribe, because I think we picked up about 15, 20 subscribers over on the YouTube channel this past week.
Awesome. So, hey, guys.
Yeah, and I think we mentioned this last time, but we really, the first threshold is 100 subscribers. When we get to 100 subscribers, we can lock in the Into the Harvest URL, which is important. So if you're hearing this right now and you're not subscribed yet on YouTube, take a minute to go over there, search for Into the Harvest, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. We'd really appreciate that. And then with the SpeakPipe as well, like Abby said, there are lots of things that we would love to talk about, and we will. But we also want to talk about things that are real pressing issues for you in terms of living your faith, sharing your faith in the everyday places. And that's why we're doing the SpeakPipe. So yeah, we hope that people will take advantage of that, and we will feature you and your question on the show, which will be a lot of fun. The last thing that I wanted to mention today, this podcast is coming out on Thanksgiving Day. And so we are on the home stretch with 2019. And a lot of people know that the day after Thanksgiving is referred to as Black Friday. Some people may not know that the reason they call it that is because most retailers are operating in the red. They're actually losing money all the way until the Friday after Thanksgiving, because Christmas shopping starts. Mm-hmm. And the amount of revenue that they generate between Thanksgiving and Christmas actually puts them in the black. And nonprofits are very similar to that, which is why I think in recent years they've done the Giving Tuesday. But it's definitely the case for us. We're doing a year-end fundraiser this year for Into the Harvest, because right now we are operating at a deficit. We're in the red. That's not uncommon, so I don't want you to be worried. But we do rely on generous year-end gifts to make our annual budget to finish in the black. And so we're asking you guys that if you've been encouraged by Into the Harvest in 2019, if you understand what we're trying to do, you believe in it, you want to see it continue and grow in 2020, then we ask that you would consider making a special year-end gift to help us finish the year in the black, finish on budget, and start 2020 on solid footing. So we're calling this Finish Strong 2019. And there's a link in the video description here. You can also just go to our website, and you'll probably be hearing more about that in the coming weeks on social media. But we really appreciate you guys. We love the community that God is building, and we hope you will help us keep it going.
Yes, absolutely. And since it's Thanksgiving Day, we do just say thank you for all of your support this year. It's been a lot of fun. I honestly cannot believe that season 2 is almost to a close. I mean, this is truly crazy.
Yeah. It's really true, Abigail. And I mean, honestly, last year we've doubled the number of shows that we've done. And then obviously we're trying here at the very end to put these shows on video as well on YouTube, which is a big step learning curve for us. So it's been an exciting year.
Really has. Totally off topic, but today in the car, we were listening to Christian radio, and they do this thing where you like ask your kids a question and you record it on video and then send it in if it's cute. But my kids, like, the question for this next week was, what does your mom do when you're not around? And so I was driving, so I didn't record my kids, but I was like, what do you guys think I do when you're not around? And my son was like, you do podcasts. Okay, well, cool. That's what I'm doing. That's correct.
Being proved correct.
So it's been a busy year for us. But we, today, ironically, because I am one of those very strong proponents for celebrating your Thanksgiving before you head into the Christmas season. And I got on to Keith last year about it, and he like really held it in his heart. Are you
Clearly.
Still suffering from me just lashing out at you about?
Oh man, it was too funny. So today was total revenge day, because I wanted Abby to be offended that I was wearing a Christmas shirt before. It was time, because I gave her a hard time about a cup last year, but she was totally in a good mood. And she even went to go don her own Christmas stuff. So the reaction
I was in a good mood, everybody.
a little disappointing.
Unlike last time, apparently. No, I think it really is just because this Thanksgiving, guys, is later than they usually are. I feel like we're going to circle back around with our Thanksgivings, but this one is a late one. And so I think we're all ready to head into the Christmas season. This Sunday actually marks the beginning of Advent. And so that's what we wanted to talk about today, is this season of Advent. You maybe have heard this word thrown around, and maybe you know what it means, maybe you don't. I had to look it up. So don't feel bad if you didn't know. Advent actually means, word for like the actual definition is the waiting on the arrival of someone important, which I think is really the perfect word. That's why we chose it. But that's what we're really doing when we head into this Advent season, is we are going into a season of waiting. So we wanted to talk about that today. We're going to start by just discussing why we think that this is an important thing to do as believers, and maybe the two sides of the waiting coin. So we kind of want to discuss the maybe the obvious waiting of just like, anticipation of Christmas, waiting on baby Jesus, that type of waiting. But we also want to talk about the waiting that we as believers are doing now, waiting for Jesus's return. So let's get into it, guys. Can we just kind of, maybe you would do an even better job than me of breaking down kind of what these two important types of waiting that we as believers are celebrating during the season, and why they're important for us to do.
Yeah, Abby, maybe before we even dive into that, maybe should we just say a word about our own experiences, history with Advent? Like, I didn't grow up with Advent at all in my childhood. I don't know if you did. I suspect that Keith, you probably did not.
I did not.
So
so I'm clearly the expert then, because I grew up with that.
Did you really?
Oh, yes.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. I grew up in a home where there wasn't even a Christmas tree. I think that it was most probably because we couldn't afford a Christmas tree, but it was also, we were very, I know I'm like, that just made it a real downer. I promise it was a very wonderful home to grow up in. And I think that there was a real focus on the meaning of Christmas. And so Advent was probably the biggest thing that we did during that holiday season. We had this set of, I guess they were brass candle holders. They were like very shiny and gold looking, and they were up on our piano, and our family actually did a candle a day. So there were actually 25 of them. And then on Sundays, we had this little kind of tray thing that had the 4 candles on it, and we would light one for each. That's what most people maybe are used to, is the lighting of the one candle every Sunday leading up to Christmas. But we would sing hymns, and we would light the candles, and whoever got to like snuff out the candle was the really lucky child. I mean, these are the important things that I gained from. So I think that there may have been some Bible reading, but as a small child, I don't remember that portion. So I probably zoned out. So,
as a small child, it's all about the lighting things on fire.
Oh, yeah.
The fire. I think that's really important. When you're just like looking up at all those candles lit, thinking like, is the house going to catch on fire now?
Well, you are
really
definitely the Advent expert in terms of years of exposure to it. For me, I don't think I even heard the word Advent growing up, even though I grew up in the Bible Belt and grew up attending church service on a regular basis. But it was a Protestant background that I grew up in, so a lot of the more historical traditions were not something that we had held on to, including something like Advent. So for our family, we became aware of it probably 10 years ago, and it was really because we were going to Sunday services on base, on an Army base at a chapel, and for several years they did Advent. And so as we began to experience that and then research it and learn the history, it was something that we began to practice in our own home with our children. And it ended up, it has been a great way for us to keep the focus on Jesus during this season, that it's not just about waiting for the 25th. That's not what we're waiting for. Like you mentioned, the word Advent. That's not what we're waiting for. We're not waiting for Christmas Day. We're acknowledging that Jesus has come once, and we're waiting for his return. And so I like that picture of waiting for the arrival of someone important. And that's really what the holiday season has become for us. And Christmas is just one day in that season. But Lakeith, what was your experience with Advent?
Yeah, so I am the true novice here. My first hearing about Advent was a couple years ago, and it's kind of a proud moment, like, because here at Into the Harvest, like we want our lives to be a reflection of our ministry, and I think that was true of the Strouds. I was living with them twice. I've lived with them on 2 different occasions, and both were awesome. And the first time, I think, was when we celebrated Advent, and I got to watch them as a family, acknowledge and celebrate Jesus, that he came and that he was a savior. But the part of the good news was that he was coming back, and we were really excited about that. So it just gave us something different to focus on during the holidays. So now, me, my family, Stephanie, Aiden, and Avery, this is going to be our first annual Advent. So we're going to get the candles, we're going to do the stories, we're going to do the hymns. We might invite a couple guys over sometimes to do it with us, but we're pumped. So we got to watch the Strouds do it, and Abby, same thing. She's had some good stuff to share, so we're excited.
Oh, that's so cool. And I love that you may have some guys come over and join you, which means that you'll be instructing the next generation of people how to do Advent, which is really, that's awesome. I love that. Yep. Well, hopefully today's conversation will help all of you just be inspired about this season and what we can make it as followers of Jesus. It can just be a very intense and stressful season of everything kind of coming at us at once, all of the parties, all of the presents, all of the other P words I can't think of. And so I really, I do think it is so important for us to maybe just carve out the time to really focus on that waiting upon Jesus. So something that maybe it was just in my quiet time. In my quiet time this week has been in the end of Matthew. And so I was reading about Jesus having the Passover feast with his disciples. And I was just struck again about the importance of the feasting times in the Old Testament and how those then collided with the New Testament, how Jesus was literally the sacrificial lamb of Passover because he was crucified during that Passover feast of that year. And I was just thinking how really, in a way, we also, by celebrating Advent, of thinking about waiting on the arrival of baby Jesus, we are also simultaneously waiting on his coming arrival. And that's really something that we as believers are called to do. So we wanted to take a few minutes to just talk about just this idea that God, through time with his people, has had them take time aside to celebrate festivals and feasts and time of fasting, and that all of those were really important part of their faith. So we just want to maybe lay a foundation of why, we would even celebrate something like Advent. So, Andrew, before we got started, you talked about a book that I laughed at the name because I thought it sounded lame. But then you told us about it, and I've taken back all my judgmental thoughts yet again. So please tell our listeners about that book. Let's get started with that.
Yeah, so I read a book earlier this year, and it's actually called How Not to Be Secular, and it's by a guy named...
guys, what a title.
So it's actually, this is what you're really going to think is kind of... I don't know if I would say lame, but it's definitely a very academic book. Nah, that's probably not the right word. I'm sorry. Basically, this book is written. There's a guy named Charles Taylor who wrote a book called A Secular Age, and that book was so confusing, so hard to follow, that this guy wrote a book to help you understand the other book. So this is a book that I read earlier this year, and I would love to have this guy on the podcast. Maybe we'll have that next season. But one thing that he talked about is how in our modern age, in 2019, we've really lost our connection to a lot of the rhythms that people 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, Christians in particular, the way that they would experience life as they went about their day in, day out, week in, week out, year out lives, that it was actually much closer to what we read about in the Old Testament, where there were feasts, there were times, annual times every year that would draw the people's attention to a different aspect of faith and God and what he had done and what he was doing, what he would do. And these were experiences that people would have. And we still have vestiges of that in modern life, especially if you are more of a high church community like Episcopalian, or if you're a Catholic, then you're more aware of these feasts. But for many of us who are coming from a Protestant background, or maybe even no background when it comes to the church, we have no reference point for feasts like this. And Advent was one of these celebrations, one of these observances that people would have year after year, just like you said, Abigail, to pause and remember that Jesus has come, and the significance of that God's Son came into the world, came into history, and lived a life, and the significance of that life and death and resurrection, but also to look forward and remember that the story isn't over, that we're actually living in the middle of this story that God is telling. And so Advent, Christmas has become very much focused on just the birth of Jesus, not even the significance of that necessarily, just even at best, when people think about the religious side of Christmas, they think about a baby in a manger, but they often don't really know much beyond that, or the significance of that, what's unique and special about that baby. And they certainly don't think forward to the return of that Son of God. But Advent really captures all of that. It captures that God's Son did come into the world, and he's going to return. And it sort of puts where we're at in our daily lives in perspective, and it helps recenter us, which is what I think the feasts were really designed to do, the feasts and the festivals. And this is a very biblical thing. Some people that I've talked to are a little apprehensive about Advent because they're not familiar with it, honestly, and they believe that it's something man-made, and therefore, if man came up with this idea, then we should not celebrate it. But if you look at the model, the principles of feasts and festivals, this is something that we find throughout Scripture, especially in the Old Testament, because we have the law of Moses that actually spells out annual feasts, annual festivals that the people were required to observe. And I've been reading in Numbers, and I just read where the law requires the men, for sure, 3 times a year to make a journey, a pilgrimage to a very specific place, and to observe different aspects of their faith, different aspects of their religion that would remind them of what God had done and why they were different and how they should live. And I know this is a long answer, so bear with me, people.
This is great. This is good.
One of the forces that we're dealing with as modern people that we're not even aware of because we've never known anything differently is that every day is the same. Every day is the same. And even for Christians, certainly for non-believers, this is the case. No day is more special than the other. And so life is just Groundhog Day over and over and over. And you can really, your vision for what's important, what really matters, can really just be caught up in the daily routine. What feasts and what annual festivals do is they draw our attention beyond the hurriedness of life, the mundaneness of life. They elevate our perspective to something that's bigger than us. It's bigger than life. It's bigger than history. It's God and what he's doing. And that's really what we can tap into. I mean, so many of us have experienced Christmas, the commercializing of Christmas, but a great way to, I guess, recapture this season, I think, is Advent, because it's a period, it's the 4 weeks leading up to Christmas. Just to be clear, the 4 Sundays prior to Christmas. So this year, Advent starts, I think it's the 3rd, whatever the first Sunday of December.
It's the first.
The first Sunday of December.
It's very easy this year.
Yes. And then it's going to be each subsequent Sunday and then Christmas. So what it does is it creates a window of time where we're purposely elevating our attention on the importance of the arrival of God's Son. So that's a lot. So I'm just going to stop talking, let you guys sort of respond to that.
Oh, that was honestly encouraging for sure, Andrew. And just knowing the history and the background. And it was something that Abby said about this guy, Charles Taylor. I actually feel like I should read the book too, because it says that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. But as a guy who's doing barbering part-time, I immediately went to his eyebrows and I was like, man, he could use a trim, you know? So
I don't know. What do you guys think?
You got to put those things back forward. Oh my goodness. So, but that shouldn't be the reason.
By its cover.
Exactly. That shouldn't be the reason I
Those are
should
like
be.
Santa eyebrows, just to like
they're
stay on
intense.
topic.
Exactly. So, but I am intrigued by that book, and it makes me want to look into it more, so that my only takeaway isn't about his eyebrows. But that topic is intriguing, how not to be secular. And I do agree that Advent has really helped me, at least personally, focus a lot more on Jesus, just period, like Jesus, the good news about him. So I thought that was good that you connected the dots.
Yeah, and I think because of this secularization, that was a hard word, of Christmas, I know I got it out. I do think that it's almost all the more important for us to use this time because it was already set aside. It was a holiday and we all as Christians celebrated it. But because of all the added on things that we've added on to Christmas, in some ways, the pushback for me personally is to then add in this element of Advent so that I can, get my mind centered and hopefully recentered for the whole year. Because it's not just for this season. Right. It's truly as followers of Jesus, the Son of God coming to earth as a baby is an incredible miracle. But then the fact that he has promised us to come back again is also maybe should be at the forefront of our minds at all times. So having that idea of how at that time when he was born, the Jewish people were looking for the Messiah. They were literally the people that were maybe close to the heart of God were looking for the Messiah. That's usually the term used in our Bibles, but that just means that they were thinking about it. They were praying about it. They were on edge, so to speak, of waiting for the Messiah. And we should be the same way. Like we should emulate that in a lot of ways. So for me, Advent is definitely about helping me recenter to having that kind of mentality because I can get so caught up in the day-to-day stuff that we very much get caught up into.
Abby, if I can just say one more thing on this topic of what you had just mentioned there in terms of all of us feel the pressure of this holiday season, the busyness, the financial impact of it, gift giving, and another point that Mr. Smith makes in this book is that you can't escape that the human experience to live life is to go through the act of observing different things. So, the secularization of Christmas and Advent.
See, it's hard.
It is. It exists no matter what. And sometimes we can say that we're keeping Christ in Christmas, but it's pretty hilarious once you kind of understand that this is the way we live as humans, that we operate in rhythms. And we've just replaced those rhythms, the rhythms that the church provided 500, 1,000 years ago. We've replaced those with modern day. So the Super Bowl is an annual festival that people are celebrating. Pumpkin spice latte from Starbucks. I mean, seriously, there's a countdown for pumpkin spice lattes, and people, there's an experience that we have inside. Not me. I'm not I just want to be very clear here. But obviously, some people are really all about pumpkin spice lattes. And even Black Friday, people are counting down Cyber Monday. These are benchmarks. Halloween.
Bro, Disney Plus, man, there was a real countdown for that.
Oh my goodness, I thought about Disney Plus too. That's terrible.
That's a big thing in America, man.
So if you didn't grow up with Advent and it feels foreign and you think, well, is this unnatural? Should I not? Would this actually detract from keeping Christ at the center? I would just say that you're already going to be going through rituals just because of the society that you're part of. And the way I see Advent is it's a chance to step away from those rituals that the world is pressing in upon us and directing our attention elsewhere, specifically directing it to the truth of the good news that God's Son has come once and he's going to come again.
Because don't you think that's why God even instrumented different feasts and festivals? Because he knew that's how he made us. He made us to mark time. I mean, there was always a new year. I mean, the moon literally is waxing and waning. I mean, we are just made this way. The seasons, I was out for a run today and like all the leaves have finally changed in Texas. So whatever day it is now in November, I am I'm finally experiencing fall. So, but
Nice.
even that, like I look forward to that every year. I mean, that's something we anticipate and look forward to.
Right.
And so we want to do that in our faith. It's really important. Okay. I think we've
Yes.
definitely, we've given our case.
Got it.
I feel like all of our listeners are now just ready to go and can't wait to celebrate Advent if they're not already. So, all right. So Andrew, what exactly do you do with your family? Or what were you doing? Like just on the Sundays, did you light a candle? What did you do?
Yeah, we've done different things, but primarily we do the 4-week lead up to on Sundays with a candle for each Sunday. And the candles represent, based on the different traditions, you might have the candle representing some different aspect of the story of Jesus, but each one focuses on a different aspect. So
Andrew, you got to quiz me. So
Yeah,
to
so-
see if I got this.
So what is the first week, the first Sunday of Advent, you light the first candle, and that represents.
Is that the hope candle?
Nope, you're doing.
This is good because we need to prepare. So our family's getting ready. So this
So
is good.
the first
Write it
candle
down.
is typically prophecy.
Prophecy.
And so then what we'll do is we'll actually read some of the prophecies, the Old Testament prophecies that foretold about the coming of the Messiah, the coming of this special leader that God was going to send into the world. And then we can read how Jesus fulfilled those prophecies in his first coming. And depending on how expansive you want to go, you could even move into prophecies about his return. But that's what you're really focusing on, is the promise that God was going to intervene and come into the world, take action. So each week, each Sunday, you light a different candle, which highlights a different aspect of the coming of God's Son into the world. You read a relevant scripture passage or number of passages about that with the family. And then we always would spend time praying as a family. And then we would sing at least one Christmas carol, usually multiple. And I would say that we did this with our kids when they were younger, and they loved it. I mean, they loved the candle lighting.
Yeah.
They loved the
Yeah.
scripture reading. They loved praying together as a family. And
Yeah.
then the songs were definitely always a big hit.
Yep. Yeah, I couldn't remember the candles, guys. I know there's like a prophecy. There's a hope candle. There's a joy candle. Is there a joy?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, there's
Joy or
joy.
rejoicing.
Joy some, and then there was
You're
the
just
Christ.
one. Yeah.
The
Good
Christ
job.
candle.
See?
All right. Okay. There's hope.
Not so
There's
bad.
hope.
But there's actually different
Right.
ones. I mean,
Exactly.
that's the Stroud version, which is a great one. And I think there's a lot of freedom in this too.
Yes.
And I think that's what we also want to tell you. I showed Keith earlier, like my giant stack of books that I was going to bring out for all of you to see. But I think that even that will show you that there's just so many different ways to
Right.
celebrate this. I think just taking the time as you're listening to this and listening to all the things that we may have to say, of just thinking, okay, how can I use this time in December, this very busy season, to turn my thoughts and my heart towards Jesus and his coming again, and the miracle of his coming the first time, and just how we can make that look like, make a plan, as my type A self would say. So, I think it has changed over the years for us because of our kids' ages. But we pretty much do the exact same thing. I think when they're really little, you just go heavy on the singing, and when they get older, you can start adding in more scripture. Like, I think that's just kind of the and there's always the fire and the flame, and that's really fabulous. I love that.
Yeah, we always have to take turns with the candle, the kids
I
lighting
know.
and snuffing.
Yeah, they will fight
highlight.
over that.
Yes.
Those listening, you should just know that will come, unless you have angel children, and please let us know if you do. We want to hear of all your child rearing tips if that's the case. Okay, so can I get into my various
Do it.
things now? Can we do it?
Yes.
Okay, so first off, I'll start with myself. So I actually, I did an online Advent study on my very first blog because I love Advent so much. And so I didn't even know that people did Advent studies. So I made up my own, and I would literally put scripture on my blog, and people would read it, and then we would all write blog posts, and I'll link them up together. This was back in 2011. So this was a long time ago.
OG.
But I know. But then I realized that maybe I had more children is what happened. And so I lost more brain cells and I became far less smart and I had less time. And so I learned that there were people out there in the world making studies for me and I didn't even have to put in the work. So from then on, I have collected a whole bunch of them. But I will do a blog post on this where we'll have a bunch of links to things. But I think the big thing is for you to just do a Google search. If you would like to do an actual book Advent study, such as this one, it's called Hallelujah, and it's based on Handel's Messiah, which is basically just Isaiah. And so every single day there was scripture reading, and mostly they were just prophecies about the coming of Jesus. And then towards the end, there were prophecies about the second coming. So that was pretty cool. And because this was based on Handel's Messiah, every day they told you like what song to listen to from the Messiah. So that was fun. Yeah. So that's what I did last year. So I personally, because of my scattered brain, I need something every single day. Maybe as a family, we only gather together once a week, like on the Sunday. But I, because of who I am, need more than that. And what we did is we actually did incorporate our kids in the everyday. We have so many Advent calendars. We have the kind that you put little candies in, because I feel like you should always incorporate candy into your Christian beliefs, because your children will end up having a happier time and really love Jesus and candy. So that's really important. So we would do like the candy one and then the lighting the candle one. So then we ended up with 3 different, like, open this little door and pull out this little treat, so that there was one for literally every child. And that's how I solved the problem of the fighting over the candle. Isn't that amazing?
I'm taking notes, Abby. That's good.
I'm such a good mom. But also just know that the bad part about that is that then Advent every night takes like 30 minutes because you're doing all the things. Okay, but here's the most important thing. This is also for you adults. You do not have to be a child for these two, but they are children related. If you have not heard about the Jesus Storybook Bible, you should buy one for yourself as an adult. I don't care who you are. You should own a Jesus Storybook Bible. They are very simple stories, but every single one of them points to Jesus at the end. And you can Google Jesus Storybook Bible Advent, and it will tell you like a little calendar of what story to read, and it'll take you right up to the birth of Jesus. But in those stories, it's basically a simplified version of what we just talked about. It's talking about how all of the Old Testament is pointing to Jesus. So, for instance, the end of the story about Noah, it's talking about how, he sent this rainbow saying he would never destroy the earth again. And then he says, hold on, we're getting there. I should have marked it. You guys are just listening to me flip pages. Okay, so it basically says a plan to one day send his own son, the rescuer. So like every single one talks about the coming of Jesus. So that's a really easy one. If you already have a Jesus Storybook Bible, if you need to buy one, you should, because even as an adult, I have cried over the Jesus Storybook Bible. It's so beautiful. So that's really great. And then another really easy and fun way to kind of change your personal perspective is this fiction telling of, it's called Ishtar's Odyssey. It's not very thick. And it is a fictional telling of a little boy whose father is a wise man. And so he travels from somewhere in Persia, and he's traveling with his father, and he like learns lessons about how not to be selfish anymore, and like kid lessons. But it's a beautiful retelling of the star and what that meant to the people that would have seen it, and it talks about the biblical prophecy of the time. And then once it actually kind of gets to what the Messiah would bring, I mean, I actually cried I'm not a crier. And maybe I didn't. I had the feeling of tears, and Brett actually cried. Maybe that's what happened. Either way, it was a really great, I think maybe a meditation is the best way to put these kind of fictional things. Well, the Jesus Storybook Bible is not fiction, but it is maybe like a simple telling of Bible stories. This is fiction, but it's a meditation on truths that, maybe if your mind is very scattered at this time of year, this would be something very simple for you. And really awesome. The kids love this book. I would say you can start reading it to them in kindergarten. So kindergartners and up will really love it. Definitely start with Ishtar's Odyssey, but we also have Jotham's Journey. He's a shepherd boy. And Tabitha's Travels. She is like a little Jewish girl. So those are those.
So those are all based around Advent, correct?
Yes.
All three of those.
So all of those, they are there leading up to Jesus's birth. Mm-hmm. Spoiler alert, they all end up being there when Jesus is born. So that, like, the traveling, well, I guess Ishtar isn't because of the timeline, but he does meet Jesus. It's the point. It's actually pretty biblically accurate. It does not have the whole shepherds and three wise men showing up on the same day, like many of our nativity scenes would tell us. Okay, so those are things that we do on a daily basis. I'm doing a She Reads Truth study. It hasn't arrived yet, but I'm really excited about it. And it's, believe it's looking at at Jesus's return as well, which I'm pretty excited about that aspect to it. So, guys, there really are so many options, and I have like two more. I'm sorry.
No, this is good because I think it's good because a lot of people, I know for me, I would not know where to start. So these are great recommendations.
Yeah, this is a good place to start. And there are probably other really, really great resources. Maybe you should call us and tell us your resources. We'll air them for everybody else. Okay, so this is a John Piper little book, The Dawning of Indestructible Joy. I thought this was based off of a podcast that he puts out every year, and it's about 3 minutes long maybe, but it's for every day leading up to the 25th. And you can go to desiringgod.com to find that podcast and to subscribe to it just for the month of December. It is so, so good. It's very short. You can listen to it on your way to a very short distance. Where do you go that's short? I don't know. To drop off my kids at school, but I wanted to think of something else, but I literally can't. So that's where you can listen to it on the way to the gym. I don't know what's close to your house. So that's what you should listen to. But this one, I didn't love this one as much, but he does have a really good insights and also taking historical information and kind of combining that in. I love that kind of stuff. Ray Vanderlaan has some really good stuff on historical information about the time of Jesus' birth and like the combination of what was going on in Rome and how that all combines together. It's really, really cool. Did you know, here's a tidbit, did you know that Bethlehem, the outskirts where all of those shepherds were, that those were actually the sheep that were raised specifically for sacrificial lambs. So those were not just any old sheep, they were sacrificial sheep, which is even cooler. Oh, yeah. I love a good imagery.
Yep.
Okay. So that podcast is really great. I would really love more recommendations for like very short Advent podcasts. So if anyone else has any good ones, I will probably be Googling that in the next few days. And maybe one day we'll do one. That'll be one of my goals.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a really short, to me, that's the real key in all of this is we want to do what's doable and not put too much on our plates, too much all at once and just become even more stressed.
Right.
So you want to be able to add things into your current life. and maybe subtract some things just so that you can make room for this good stuff. So those are some of my resources. Do you guys have anything you want to add? I just totally dominated for an extended period of time.
This is definitely, this is where people need to hear from you for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I did have a question for you though. You're going to be, this podcast is coming out, like you said, on Thanksgiving Day. The following Monday, I believe, is going to be the day that your article on Advent comes out, that posts to the blog. Is that right?
Yes, it's either already out, as in I published it this last Monday, or it's coming out this Monday. It just depends on my Harvester article because that person needs to get them in. So
got it. So
anyway, they will have it.
These resources will be linked there.
Almost all of them, yes.
Okay, and that'd probably be a good place. And if not, then
yeah. So they can see direct links. And you know what, guys? If you click on those direct links and you buy one of those resources off of our blog, then it will be an affiliated link and we'll get maybe 15 cents. And it'll be really the best day of our lives.
It'll help us finish the year.
Yeah.
But that would probably be a good place too, Abigail, for people. If you do have a resource that you love, that's been great, and you want to share it with the community, then that might be a good place that we can encourage people to post
that would be awesome. That way everyone can see it.
Mm-hmm. And I think my hope, just hearing you guys share on Advent, is that your passion for it is contagious, that even if people like are figuring this out as I go and looking up resources and trying to establish something, I really do hope that your passion for Advent and the coming of Jesus is contagious, because it was for me. Like, I hope that for listeners, they feel the same way, that, you know, they're walking away like, man, I really want to think about Advent and incorporating it this year.
I'm very passionate. I actually just thought of two other things. There's literally so many. And nowadays there are really, I think that we're coming into a great time where this is sort of coming back into play, and that's great. And so I think just take advantage of the resources that you find. And if it's one of those, like, there's a book where it's like a little baby Jesus and you and your family do acts of service all throughout the month, and it like tells you which ones to do. That's great too. That's a cool, different aspect of Christmas that we want to hold on to. I tend to really hit on the Messiah is coming aspect in our home, but we could probably use some more giving hearts around here too. So I think every year we kind of just look to see what the need of our family is, what we maybe need reorienting and refocusing on as a family, and really make it about that. And so I think all of us can always use a greater reminder of the promise coming King. So for sure, let's focus on that one. And yes, I'm sorry about my uber passion about this episode.
No, the exuberance is great.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think we pretty much covered everything. We really, and I specifically would like, this is very meta of me to say this on a podcast, but please recommend podcasts to me personally. I would really like to know if you know of any other maybe kids-oriented Advent podcasts. I would love to hear about it. But we really would love your feedback. Love to hear your thoughts, your opinions, your resources. We want it all. And we really appreciate you listening to it. And happy Thanksgiving.
That's right. Yeah, this is coming out on Thanksgiving. So this is our wishing you a happy Thanksgiving, and also saying thank you for being part of the journey with us here at Into the Harvest. We really do appreciate each one of you. We love hearing from you guys. And we're excited about going into this Advent season together with you.
Yeah, we're super thankful. Happy hearts because of you guys and the journey that God has taken us on through the podcast and being here. So happy Thanksgiving. I hope it goes well. Be safe. And yeah.
Andrew, did you want to do one last?
Oh, yes. Thanks, Abigail. We'll see
we had like an awkward staring at each other moment there. That was cool. Let's keep that in.
It's the advantage of video. Yeah, we'll see if we keep this in. But yeah, just a reminder for folks, we are doing the year-end fundraiser. We do need your help. We're excited about 2020, and we've already got ideas and plans for how we want to grow not just the community, but provide resources that I think will really help you live and share your faith. And we would do this for free. But the way the world works is it's hard to do this for free. So if you value what we're doing and you want to support it, then this is a great opportunity with the year-end fundraiser. So you can go to the link in this particular video or podcast episode, or visit our website and make a special year-end contribution to the Finish Strong campaign. Appreciate you guys.
We'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye, Abby.